Whether you're a fan of Metal Gear Solid 4 or not, it's undeniable that it holds a significant place in the Metal Gear saga. The game's potential inclusion in the Master Collection Volume 2, or as a standalone remaster for modern platforms, has sparked much debate. In this video, we'll clear up the misconceptions surrounding the feasibility of porting MGS4 and explore why it's a worthy investment for Konami. Let's get into it. I won't claim to be an expert on the inner workings of the PS3 or any console for that matter, but through my research for this video, I've gained a bit clearer of an understanding of how the PS3 works. A major point of discussion among gamers and developers alike is the PS3 cell processor. The PS3 cell processor was a major breakthrough in technology, allowing the console to handle complex tasks simultaneously. Imagine it as a powerful multitasking computer, which was fantastic for creating detailed and immersive games. However, this advanced technology also made the PS3 challenging for developers to work with, as it required new programming techniques to fully utilize its capabilities. For Metal Gear Solid 4, Hideo Kojima's team, like many other developers at the time, faced the formidable task of leveraging the cell processor's unique capabilities to bring their vision to life. MGS4 was a highly ambitious project with a lot of complex elements, from its detailed graphics to its intricate AI and expansive world design. The development team had to push the limits of the PS3's hardware in order to achieve the game's high level of detail. Kojima Productions invested significant time and effort into mastering the cell processor. Their success is a testament to the potential of the PS3 when developers were willing to invest the time to understand and exploit its architecture. The difficulty of porting MGS4 to other platforms isn't just about the PS3's unique hardware, it's also about the tightly integrated nature of the game's design with the cell processor. The game's code was finely tuned to exploit the strengths of the PS3 specifically, making it challenging to adapt for other systems without significant reworking. But there is another developer that pushed the boundaries of what the PS3 could do, potentially even surpassing what Koji Pro did with MGS4. That developer is none other than Naughty Dog. Games like the Uncharted series and The Last of Us were initially crafted with the PS3's unique architecture in mind, but have since been reworked for newer consoles. Naughty Dog's team meticulously adapted their code to accommodate the differences in hardware, optimizing their games for improved performance and visuals on contemporary systems. This process of adaptation and optimization demonstrates that while challenging, the porting of a PS3 title like Metal Gear Solid 4 is feasible. There's an excellent video from a Naughty Dog developer that goes into great detail about the process. It'll be linked below. There's also the fact that Koji Pro got MGS4 running on the Xbox 360 back in the day. This has been reported by Ryan Payton and Hideo Kojima himself. They both mentioned the game can and has been made to run on a 360, and the only real reason it didn't release on that platform was because of the game's size. There is no mention of the game being impossible to port for other reasons. Kojima even mentioned his interest in potentially releasing MGS4 for the next generation of Xbox consoles at that time. And we haven't even gone over the incredible advancements to emulation that have happened within the last decade or so. If a bunch of hobbyists, albeit incredibly talented hobbyists like those behind the most popular PS3 emulation project, RPCS3, can figure out how to reverse engineer the PS3 to the point that it can run MGS4 in 4K and 60 frames per second, I think Konami can put a team of talented programmers together to get this done if they haven't done so already. Finally, I want to mention that if Sony really wanted to, they could bring PS3 emulation to the PS5. The PlayStation 5 is plenty powerful to run PS3 games at native resolutions. Hell, I've seen handhelds weaker than the PS5 run Metal Gear Solid 4 at a steady 60 frames per second. This would of course require Sony to spend money and manpower toward this project, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that it is possible. The main obstacle in all of this is the fact that these companies would need to invest money in either of these projects. We're going to get into the topic of Konami and how likely they are to do something like this in just a bit. For now, I want to get into the next big elephant in the room. Metal Gear Solid 4 is filled to the brim with product placement, from Apple products like Snake's iPod to the iMac and MacBook that Otacon uses, to things such as the Regain energy drink and Playboy magazines. In order for MGS4 to be re-released in any capacity, the agreements for these items would need to be renegotiated, or the items would need to be removed or altered in some way. We've already seen examples of this happening in other Metal Gear games like Peace Walker, in which the brand name items like Doritos and Mountain Dew were changed to generic potato chips and canned soda in the Western releases of the game. Kojima is a massive fan of product placement in his games. He seemingly likes to incorporate the things he consumes or is a fan of in real life into Metal Gear, and even into a more recently released game, Death Stranding. And even that game got its Monster Energy drink product placement removed for the director's cut. This type of thing happens all the time in the games industry, and it's not really a massive barrier against re-releasing a game. There's been some confusion over the years with how product placement and licensing items works relative to video games. The way the Apple partnership, just as an example, initially went down was probably something like this. Kojima and Aki Saito scheduled a meeting with a team at Apple and displayed their interest in showcasing some of the more popular Apple products at the time that they themselves used on a daily basis. If you need further proof, there's a podcast found within the iPod in-game in which Ryan Payton and Aki Saito explain the process of how the Apple products came to find themselves in MGS4.
You worked on this project. You worked on getting approvals from Apple. Can you talk about that process of getting the iPod into the game, which is very cool?
Yes. Well, Kojima Production always comes up with cool ideas, and at that time still is. Everyone has an iPod as their favorite music player, and we thought, as Hideo, Mr. Kojima, is a great Apple fan as well. We thought that why not we put the actual iPod in the game and for Snake to use as an item, which is a cool idea. So it was really fun working with Apple because they're really nice guys actually.
Apple would then be the ones to decide how much they want to give Konami in exchange for the promotion of their items. This money would go to the overall budget of the game. In some cases, Apple could ask for a percentage of the game's sales. So just as an example, Apple might have asked for 2% of MGS4's total sale revenue after a predetermined period. Konami would not be forced to pay Apple anything if MGS4 is re-released unless this is explicitly mentioned in their contract, but they would have to reach out and ask for permission to use their branded items again. Depending on what exactly was written and agreed to in the original contract, Apple may be able to ask for compensation, but if they agree to allow their items to remain in MGS4 indefinitely, including any potential re-releases in the future, Konami is good to go on all fronts. The inverse of this makes no real sense if you think about it. It's just hard to imagine a scenario where Konami would greenlight Kojima to approach Apple with some outrageous amount to then feature Apple's products and promote Apple's brand in his game. What exactly would Konami get out of it? If this is the case, then I can kinda see why Konami fired Kojima almost a decade ago. It's just not good business sense. Either way, the point is, we obviously don't know the details, but even if the worst case scenario ends up happening and Apple wants nothing to do with the re-release of MGS4, all Konami needs to do is change the branding of these in-game items, and they can get pretty damn close to the originals if a game like GTA 5 is any indication. Look just how close their iFruit phone, an obvious parody of the iPhone 5S, gets to the original. It even uses the same exact font. It's not like they would need to completely change every single aspect of the textures or models. The various PlayStation branded items are even more of a non-issue, considering the Master Collection Volume 1 is on PC, Xbox, and Nintendo platforms, complete with the PS1 console models in MGS1. And speaking of MGS1, we've already seen evidence within the Master Collection Volume 1 that Konami is willing to make changes to textures in order to avoid copyright issues. Diazepam, before being picked up, used to display as a white cross with a red background. Due to real-life organizations like the Red Cross being a bit more strict with their copyright, this was changed to a white cross with a green background in the Master Collection. And while I know this is probably a much easier fix than what awaits them in MGS4, it still shows that they are ready and willing to make changes. Furthermore, Calorie Mate, a well-known recovery item, is still present in the Master Collection of MGS3, showing further proof that product placement is no massive barrier to re-releasing a game. Now you may be asking yourself about the arsenal of weapons found within MGS4. Well, the same discussion we just went over still applies to the topic of weapons. However, it might be a little more complicated with weapons and arms of any kind due to real-life tragedies that occurred after MGS4 originally released. Eurogamer has an article touching on this and the history of licensed guns in games. I'll have that linked for you in the description below. Gun manufacturers also have much more strict rules and policies developers must abide by. Things such as their weapons can only be used by the, quote, good guys and no terrorist groups. Guns must also look, sound, and fire as close to their real-life counterparts as possible. Personally, I think this would be a harder license to renegotiate over things like Apple products or Regain, but again, even when faced with the worst case scenario, Konami has options. And you don't even have to look very far off for the most likely solution. Metal Gear Solid 5 has 0 licensed weapons, instead opting to take inspiration from real-world arms and creating their own in-universe weapons with original naming conventions as well. The SVG-76 is obviously heavily inspired by the AK-47, the SC-336 SMG by the MAC-11, and the M2000 Sniper D is inspired by a Remington 700. While I don't mean to imply that this modification of weapons and items will be a quick fix or easy by any means, it can be done. The real question is whether Konami is willing to dedicate the money and manpower toward achieving this, which happens to be our next topic. Konami has, in the eyes of many, deservedly caught a bunch of hate in the past and has ruined their public image. Whether it was because of whatever went down between them and Kojima, the release of Metal Gear Survive, or the fact that they allowed some of their biggest IP to rot for years, fans have not had the best image of Konami for quite a while. I have been extremely vocal about my main issue with Konami, the fact that over the years they were not transparent with us, the fans, at all. Up until last year, Metal Gear itself was dormant since 2018, with pretty much no news about the series' future. However, since the Master Collection Volume 1 and Metal Gear Solid Delta were announced, it genuinely seems like Konami is entering a new era. I can't speak for other Konami franchises like Silent Hill, but at least when it comes to Metal Gear, it does seem like they are trying. And I know the Master Collection Volume 1 launched to some mixed reviews, and the communication and handling of its release could have both been handled much better, but it seems like they are receptive to our feedback now more than they've ever been. This is evidenced by the Metal Gear Production Hotline videos they've been posting every few months. In the latest episode, you can see all of the fan feedback they've been aggregating, and when I say all, I mean all of it. Even hate comments from fans stating that they ruined Metal Gear and that they should just quit and let the franchise die. It's all there for everyone to see in an official Konami livestream archived on their channel. This would have never happened just 5 years ago, let alone a decade ago. Noriaki Okamura, the developer you keep seeing pop up in the Hotline videos and even other outlets like the Xbox podcast, is a Koji Pro veteran that has been around since the very beginning. He has stated multiple times that they welcome this fan feedback, and he even urges fans to keep it coming and to keep them, Konami, accountable. I personally believe him, and I don't think this is all just lip service to win back fans. The Master Collection Volume 1 has been patched multiple times, fixing the various errors that have popped up, with promises of more patches that further improve the collection on the way. You might not like the cadence at which they're releasing these updates, but at least they're updating it. The HD collection only received patches for things such as the ability to use transfarring for save files and options to go to the main menu in the case of Peace Walker HD. Things like the codec delay in MGS2, missing textures and effects, and even typos were never patched like they have been in the Master Collection. So what does any of this have to do with MGS4? Well, for one, there are still plenty of fans out there that think Konami is incapable of taking on the task of porting or remastering MGS4 for modern platforms. Taking away personal emotions and biases against Konami and looking at the state of things objectively for a second, if MGS4 has ever had a chance of escaping the PS3, now is its best chance. The Master Collection Volume 1 insinuates that there will be multiple volumes of Metal Gear game compilations released in the future. Konami has also stated that they want the Master Collections to be the definitive collections of the Metal Gear saga. I just do not see how they can make a statement like that and not have Metal Gear Solid 4 included in some capacity. Konami isn't Capcom. They have not been knocking it out of the park with their remakes for years now. They also don't have new entries to beloved series holding strong with massive anticipation from their fans. They cannot afford to brush a game like Metal Gear Solid 4 off. They cannot play the, well, Metal Gear Solid 6 is on the way, so just play and enjoy that card. If the Master Collection Volume 2 is truly meant to be the second volume of the definitive collection of games, there is just no way that Metal Gear Solid 4 shouldn't be included. There is evidence already out there that Konami at the very least has MGS4 in mind to some capacity. On the official Metal Gear Portal site, found within the history section, you'll find a timeline of the Metal Gear canon. You'll notice that the games included and playable on the Master Collection Volume 1 are outlined in red and are clickable, which then takes you to a landing page giving you a brief history of each game. Upon entering the source code for the page containing the timeline, Metal Gear historian Nitroid discovered that the remaining games are also set to have clickable links, presumably setting the page up for future releases of these games in a future master collection. Included in this list is Metal Gear Solid 4, as you can see. While this doesn't confirm anything, it does show that MGS4 is at the very least being considered in some way. Finally, to put a bookend on the topic of Konami, I think it's important for fans to remember that this isn't the same Konami from nearly a decade ago. The higher-ups in charge of the decision to let go of Kojima are no longer in those positions. The people in charge of actually working on Metal Gear seem to care about preserving the series and also about creating remakes that do the originals justice. To make a blanket statement that Konami is incompetent and doesn't have the capability to tackle the porting of MGS4 takes away from the hard work, expertise, and dedication of these individuals, many of which have been around since the very first Metal Gear Solid and all the way through to the creation of MGS4. It's easy to forget that there are actual human beings behind the scenes who have been honing their craft for decades that still work at Konami. Those are the people who have been tasked with keeping Metal Gear alive for the next generation. I think we can all, at the very least, give them our support and feedback while they try to figure things out. Regardless of how you or I may feel about MGS4, objectively, there is no reason to be against the porting or remastering of this game. If you feel that Metal Gear Solid 4 doesn't live up to the Metal Gear entries that came before it, that is your prerogative and your personal opinion. And that opinion has absolutely no bearing on the fact that MGS4 is integral to the Metal Gear saga. It's a game that deserves to be easily accessible on modern platforms. From a video game preservation standpoint, a game like this needs to be preserved and playable on consoles and platforms that will be around for the foreseeable future. The same exact argument for the existence of something like the Master Collection Volume 1 and all of the game that it contains can be used here. I see no real reason why Snake's Revenge and the NES port of Metal Gear 1 should be preserved, but Metal Gear Solid 4 shouldn't. There are also thousands upon thousands of fans out there that have never truly experienced MGS4 for themselves and have had to either watch a playthrough on YouTube or just skip out on the game entirely. It's easy to forget, with the series being 30 years old, that not every single Metal Gear fan was there at MGS4's original launch. There has been a huge influx of new players, and especially players from the younger generation that got into Metal Gear via Rising or even promotional events like the Metal Gear crossover with Fortnite. There are also tons of fans that love Metal Gear Solid 4. In fact, it's their favorite Metal Gear game of all time. Those people deserve to have access to their favorite game without having to keep a console from 2 generations ago plugged in. Not to mention that even the most adamant Metal Gear Solid 4 haters would at the very least consider buying a port or remaster that runs better than the original game, even if that means waiting for a sale or not purchasing it day one until reviews have come out for it. Now is the time to rally together as Metal Gear fans and show Konami that we do want a Metal Gear Solid 4 remaster, or at the very least a port playable on modern platforms. We need to show them that it would be worth their time and money. The appeal of a potential remaster or port extends beyond nostalgia. It's about honoring the game's impact on the series and making it available for future generations to enjoy. I made a video of my impressions after playing Metal Gear Solid 4 in 4K and a smooth 60 frames per second, so check that out if you want to see just how amazing the game can look and play. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.